Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you on how to build agents for data insights. First I'll be explaining the architecture and then I'll be showing you on how to implement it using Python. I'll be using a package called as LangGraph which allows for building very powerful agents. Now let us jump into the screens. So the data insight use case which I have is related to customer sentiment analysis. So we'll be taking data related to Amazon customer reviews and then we are going to calculate the sentiment behind these reviews. So we are going to have an agent which will take an input query such as make a sentiment analysis of the review as well as give an interpretation. And then this agent is going to calculate three things. The first, it is going to give us the sentiment analysis, a visualization, second, as well as third, an interpretation. So the sentiment analysis should look something like this. For each and every review, we will have either the sentiment is positive or negative or neutral. We'll be also having a visualization which will show the proportion of positive sentiments versus the negative sentiments. And then we'll also have an interpretation of all the results. Now this interpretation is pretty powerful. It justifies on why you should be using agents for sentiment analysis. Now let me also briefly show on what do I mean by agent. So agent has got three main components. The first is a chatbot interface which allows the agent to interact with the human. Second is the access to a large language model. Now the user prompt or the human request could be quite complex text. So a large language model enables to interpret all this text very efficiently. And then it also has got list of tools. So tools are basically capabilities, and in this case we have a tool which is going to calculate all the sentiment. Now let me jump into the Python code to show you the implementation. So here I'm into the Python Jupyter notebook. So first of all, we are going to import packages which are related to LangGraph. And then here I'm importing packages which are related to data frame visualization. And we are also going to use OpenAI large language model. And let me first also explain the architecture of the agent. So this agent is based on LangGraph, and LangGraph is a graph-based agentic framework, which means that it has got different nodes and then it has got edges between all these nodes. So here we have two nodes. One is the chatbot node and the second is the tool node. The chatbot node is going to interact with the human and the tool node is going to calculate the sentiment analysis. So the chatbot node will receive this user request and then it is going to pass this user request as well as the list of tools what it has to a large language model. The large language model will analyze the user request and then it is going to also analyze the list of tools available and give a response back to the chatbot node that for this user request you need to activate the sentiment analysis tool. The chatbot will then activate the sentiment analysis tool which is going to do all the sentiment analysis. So it is going to take each and every review and then it is again going to pass it to a large language model which is going to return back the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment. So this tool will calculate the complete sentiment analysis. It will also make a visualization as well as it will also calculate the top 10 words by sentiment. Top 10 words which are occurring in positive sentiments as well as top 10 words which are occurring in the negative sentiments. And it is going to pass all this information back to the chatbot. And the chatbot is then going to send the list of top 10 words again to a large language model and it is going to get an interpretation of the complete sentiment analysis. And then it will pass back to the user the sentiment analysis, visualization as well as the interpretation. Now let me talk about the different large language models I've used. So for example, for the chatbot node, I've used the model O4 Mini. O4 Mini is a pretty powerful model when it comes to handling complex text. And I've used it in two situations. So first of all, I've used it to analyze the user query. And then I've also used it to analyze the interpretation of the sentiment analysis. In both these tasks, understanding a user query as well as interpreting the results of sentiment analysis are pretty heavy when it comes to complex text analytics. And O4 Mini is a perfect choice for these two kind of activities. Now for sentiment analysis, I've used the model GPT 3.5 Turbo. Now this is a model which is pretty powerful in terms of speed. And when you have to do sentiment analysis, you have to calculate sentiment for each and every record. And there could be multiple records. So it is very useful to have a model which is very good in this performance, so that the sentiment analysis for each and every record could be calculated in a very rapid way. Now let us look at the data. So the data has got the product ID as well as it has got the customer review. And let us now also look at some of the functions which we are going to use for sentiment analysis. So the first function, what we are going to use is, we can also call it as a lambda function, because this function is going to be applied for each and every line in the data. So this function is going to take each line and then it is going to combine it with a prompt and then pass it to a large language model. This prompt is an indication to a large language model on what needs to be done. And the large language model will then give a result back, which is the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment. Now this probability of the sentiment is pretty important, because it helps to understand on how positive are the sentiments or how negative are the sentiments. So for example, for an enterprise, it really helps understand the level of negativeness. If you have reviews which are very negative, you need to maybe take them up as a priority. So this probability field is going to help you manage the priority of different customer reviews. Now let us look at this lambda function on how it is implemented in Python. So this lambda function will have a system prompt which will indicate that you are an assistant that reviews text and identifies the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment. The sentiment could be either positive, neutral or negative. And the probability is between 0 and 1. And we also have a user prompt which will have the actual customer reviews. Now we are making a new parameter which will have both the system prompt as well as the user prompt, and then we are going to pass it to the large language model. The large language model is going to respond back with the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment, and then we can extract both these fields from the response which is given by the large language model, and then we return it back as a return of this function. Now let me also talk about on how we are calculating this top 10 words for each and every sentiment. So the result of this lambda function is the review text as well as the sentiment as well as the probability. And what we are going to do is, we are first going to remove all the stop words. So stop words are generic words which actually do not add too much value. And once we have removed the stop words, we can make two groups, one group for negative words, one group for positive words, and then we just list the top 10 words which are occurring in these two groups. Now let us see on how this function for the top 10 words can be implemented in Python. So this function, we first have to define a list of stop words. So here I've defined list of stop words in English, but you can use some external packages which will allow you to define stop words in multiple languages. Now here we are looping through the data and we are going to group by this type of sentiment, so either positive or negative. Once we have these groups, we are trying to identify all the words and we are converting into a lower case, and then we are removing the stop words, and then we are using this counter functionality which is going to give us the word frequency for each and every word, and then we are going to return back a dictionary which will have the top 10 words occurring by positive sentiment as well as negative sentiments. Now till now we have defined different functions. We have defined a function which is a lambda function which is going to calculate the sentiment for each and every review. We have also defined a function which is defining the top 10 words for each type of sentiment. Now we can use these functions into the sentiment analysis tool. So this tool is basically going to take the user request, and then based on the response from the large language model, it will have the two things identified. It will have the column for which a sentiment analysis has to be calculated, as well as it will also have the location of the input data file. It is going to then call this lambda function as well as the functions related to the top 10 words, and it is going to give back a response related to the sentiment analysis, visualization as well as the top 10 words. Now let us see on how this tool is implemented in Python. Now because this is a tool, whose definition will be passed to the large language model, it is very important to define and describe this tool. This helps the large language model easily understand what this tool is about, as well as assign different variables which are in the tool from the values which are available in the human prompt. So here we are defining this particular definition of the tool. We are telling that this tool is doing sentiment analysis. And here we are also defining the details of all the different arguments. So column text is the column on which we are going to do the sentiment analysis. And input data file is the location of the input file. So first of all, we are going to create a data frame by reading the data. We are then going to use the lambda function, and here we are using the model GPT 3.5 Turbo. And the lambda function is going to calculate the sentiment for each and every line, and it is going to return back two columns as we have seen earlier. It is going to return back the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment. And these two new columns we are putting it in a variable called as new columns. And then we are concatenating these new columns into the data frame and creating another data frame, df underscore sentiment. We can save this df underscore sentiment also as an output file. And then we are using our function to get the top 10 words by positive sentiments and negative sentiments. And then we are creating a dictionary which will have this top 10 words. Here I am creating this visualization which will help us visualize the results of sentiment analysis, and then we can pass back the response to the chatbot node that sentiment analysis has been completed, and here is a dictionary which has got the list of top 10 words by positive and negative sentiments. Now in case some error happens, we can always return back a response to the chatbot node that an error has occurred, unfortunately, so that the chatbot knows that okay, the sentiment analysis tool actually didn't work, so it can give an appropriate response back to the user. Now we are all set to define the LangGraph architecture. So first of all, we are defining the large language model with the chatbot node we'll be using. We are also defining the tools, which is our sentiment analysis tool. And then here we are defining the chatbot node. We are adding the chatbot node to a graph builder. We are also adding the tool node to a graph builder. And then we are creating edges between all these nodes. So for example, you can see from this diagram that we have a chatbot node, which is the starting point. And then this chatbot node is connected to the tool node. And there is a communication which is happening between the chatbot node and the tool node. Now let us invoke this graph by first of all giving a query. So this is our human query, like give me sentiment analysis of the review, and this is the location of the input file, and also give an interpretation. And we can take this query and invoke our graph over here. Now you can see that once you invoke, the sentiment analysis for each and every line is calculated. You have some lines which has got positive sentiments as well as the probability, as well as you have some lines who have negative sentiments as well as the probability. And here you also can see a visualization. You can see that the positive sentiments are more than negative sentiments. And you can also loop through all the messages which have happened between the chatbot node and the LLM, as well as the chatbot node, as well as the tool node. Now all these, there are three types of messages. The one is the human message, which is the user prompt which the user is given to the agent. You have the AI message, which is the message from the chatbot node, and then you have the tool message, which is the message from the tool node. So let us see on what these messages have been generated. So here you have the human message, like this is our prompt, what we have given, give me sentiment analysis of the review. And then we can see that this message is from the chatbot node, that it has correctly identified that the tool to be used is the sentiment analysis, as well as it has identified correctly the fields from the user prompt. So here we can see that the column text for which the review has to be done is the review. And it has also identified the input data file, which is the file name which is given over here. You can see that this has also been correctly identified. And then you can see that the tool node has also correctly executed. You can see that it has said that the sentiment analysis has been calculated, and here is the dictionary of the top 10 words. So here you can see the top 10 words which are occurring in the negative sentiment, as well as the top 10 words which are occurring in the positive sentiment. Now this tool message is again going to be passed to the chatbot node, and the chatbot node is going to use the power of large language model to interpret the results of sentiment analysis. So here you can see that it has done a pretty nice job. It has given a list of the top negative words and top positive words, and then it has also given an interpretation. For example, it says that the negative terms strongly point towards complaints related to seafood, and it has got words like tuna, salt, sea, etc., etc. And it also indicates that what does this mean? It means that if you are selling canned tuna or sea product, watch out for over-salting or packaging complaints. So this is pretty powerful. This makes use of agents for data insights a very interesting proposition. So I hope you have liked this video. If yes, please do subscribe to the channel, as well as give a thumbs up to the video. I've also implemented this code in my platform called a datajarvis.ai. It's a no-code platform which will allow you to get insights into your data rapidly. So please check it out and let me know your feedback. And looking forward to connect to you in the next video. Thank you.